Hello and welcome. It's been a quarter century since the Kargil war came into our drawing rooms. Very vivid pictures, visuals, and of course the bravery and the sacrifice of the Indian Army soldiers, young officers, led by very wise leaders, including General VP Malik, who was the Indian Army chief at that point in time. And we are privileged to interview General Malik 25 years later about the Kargil war, how it happened, what happened, and the subsequent fallout of the war. Thank you very much, sir, for your time and giving us this opportunity to discuss the war 25 years later. It's been a quarter century, like I said, but something that this generation needs to know, and that's why this effort.
Yeah. Welcome, Nitin. Good to see you here.
Thank you, sir. So let me start with the entire beginning of the war itself, sir. It was in May, early May, that you started getting some indications, and that time everyone was concerned with what was happening in the valley. You had got some things under control. So perhaps that area was not as under focus as it is now, maybe, or even during the war. So where did you start getting the feeling that something is happening in the Kargil sector or the Kargil, Dras, Batalik sector?
You know, when these initial reports of infiltration came, I was abroad.
Sir.
And I had gone on an official trip to Czech Republic and Poland. And around about 15th, 16th of May, that I started getting the reports that there is some infiltration that has taken place in Batalik sector. And so I would inquire on the telephone to let me know what is happening. And between 15th to 18th, 19th, I kept getting reports about there are more infiltration taking place, but then always given an assurance that everything is all right and 15 Corps will be able to handle them. But I came back on the 19th or 20th of May, and then I took a trip straight away to Udhampur and Srinagar. I wanted to go to Kargil also, but because of bad weather, I couldn't go. So the briefing that I got in Srinagar and Udhampur, that gave me an impression that we are not fighting the jihadis, we are fighting Pakistani regular army.
Right.
These infiltrators were not leaving the ground. They were holding the ground despite the firefighting that is taking place. They were being supported by the artillery, and an odd helicopter had also been seen in the vicinity. So that was the point. Then I told 15 Corps that, look, I don't mind getting a few casualties, but we must identify who these people are. That doubt about jihadis, I wanted to sort that out. So after a few days more, then I was quite sure that we are fighting with Pakistan Army,
Right.
and we'll have to change our rules of engagement.
Sure.
As you know, when you are fighting terrorists or CI ops,
Yes.
you have a different kind of rules of engagement.
Certainly.
And now you have different kind
Right.
of
Now no holds barred.
no hold barred.
Right.
So that is what then we started preparing for it.
Right.
And when the briefing took place of the CCS on the 23rd of May in Delhi, and I was Chairman Chiefs of Staff Committee. By that time, both my colleagues had agreed that we should all work together.
Sure.
And so during the briefing, then I told the CCS, headed by Prime Minister Vajpayee, that I don't think that we are fighting with jihadis, we are fighting with, and therefore all three of us will have to work together and work out a military strategy.
Right.
And so he gave us an okay on that.
Okay. So that is where the turning point in the strategy took place around that CCS, after the CCS meeting.
Yes, that's
You
right.
would have got the go ahead to do the
Yes.
thing.
Earlier, when we wanted to make use of the Air Force, there was a bit of hesitation,
Right.
because people felt that use of Air Force would escalate the whole
Sure.
situation.
The
So on this briefing when I did,
right.
then there was no such agitation,
Sure.
and the Prime Minister said, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Okay. So having got that go ahead, You had already anyway inducted a lot of troops into Dras and Batalik sectors. But the decision to induct 8 division, 8 mountain division, was it before the CCS meeting or after?
No, the orders to induct 56 Brigade had been given earlier.
Earlier, right.
56 Brigade
Yes, a
is
part of the 8 division, 8 mountain division.
And the rest of the division, I in fact took the GOC with me in a helicopter, and it was either on the 30th of May or 1st of June.
Right.
There in Dras, I told him that you will be taking over this sector.
Right.
And that was the start of the rest of the division to move there.
Yes, and now the division is in that sector.
And now that division is still there.
And your son is heading that, is leading that division.
Not only that,
yes,
I commanded that division myself.
Absolutely.
You know.
And that division has a distinction of giving 4 chiefs to the Indian Army.
That's right.
Right from 1971. I mean, the person who led the division in 1971, General Krishna Rao, he also...
And the logo of that division is forever in operations.
So therefore, it is still forever in operations. So in a way, it was destined for 8 division, 8 mountain div to come there.
I guess
because
so.
One had also heard that you had considered inducting 6 mountain division into
yeah, we
Kargil.
did consider during that period only, and we moved 6 mountain div
Right.
For an offensive task.
I see. Oh, you had an offensive
Yes.
task in mind.
You know, soon after that,
Right.
we worked on an offensive task,
Right.
and we moved 6 div, which was in Bareilly.
Right.
But another reason for sending 8 mountain div was it was close by.
Right.
You know, the pass
Zozila Pass had opened.
And we could induct it immediately.
Sure.
So that was the reason also for inducting 8 mountain div straight away.
But this offensive action thing has not really, been talked about much, what you had planned with 6 div. What was the plan, sir, that time? If you can share that.
Look, I can't share the operational plan as such.
Right.
But that would have gone through if we had been given permission by the CCS to cross the line of control.
Right.
But we were ready for
Right.
offensive tasks, not only here,
Yeah.
but elsewhere also.
I see.
So we had these offensive tasks ready, and people had been briefed, and people were quite prepared for it, including 6 mountain div.
So talking about the decision not to cross the line of control has been spoken about in various ways, has been discussed threadbare. What was that decision, and was it a kind of final decision, or it was always flexible?
No, you know, in our briefing, I was categorically told that you will not cross the line of control or international border.
Okay.
At the end of the briefing, that was made clear. So it
Right.
became a terms of reference for
Sure.
us.
Right.
And at that time, the situation was not very clear.
Right.
And one could also understand, you know, we had sanctions on us after the nuclear weapons test that we had done
In 1998.
in 1999. So international situation, as far as we were concerned,
Was not very favorable.
They
Yes.
were not favorable for us
Right.
at all.
Yeah.
So one could understand, and then even the political leadership was not very sure about who these jihadis are. I
Right.
was saying that these are not jihadis, but
Correct.
you know, but then the intelligence agencies had given them a different picture.
Right.
So in the beginning we didn't say anything, but after some time I heard the Prime Minister speaking in the open that I have told the armed forces not to cross the line of control.
Right.
Then I had to go and tell him.
Yes.
And on one day, we were 3 of us, Prime Minister, Mr. Brijesh Mishra, NSA, and I, we were walking in the corridor, and I told him, I said, sir, please don't make the statement again. So he looked at me, he says, "Kyun, kya baat hai?"
Achha.
So I told him, I said, suppose we cannot undo what has happened in Kargil.
Right.
We'll try and do our best, but in
Yes.
case we cannot do,
Right.
then I have no alternative except to cross the line of control or the border.
Yes.
And if I come to you for that, with that request, aap humko kya bolenge?
Correct.
So he kept quiet.
Okay.
But that very evening,
Mm-hmm.
Brijesh Mishra took an interview
Uh-huh.
on one of the TV channels.
Right.
And there, during the interview, he said, not crossing the border on LoC holds good today. We don't know about tomorrow.
So that actually gave a flexibility, brought in the element of flexibility there.
And mind you,
Sir.
this was a very credible threat that we had posed,
Right.
because I had moved my formations
You had mentioned.
from the east, from central India,
Right.
and they were all positioned the strike corps were positioned
Right.
for an attack with a very short notice.
Correct.
We had also moved part of our navy from the Bay
Western,
of Bengal
yes.
to Arabian Sea.
Right.
And Air Force in any case was ready
Already.
all along.
So that that became a credible threat. So that was one good clarification, because a lot of discussion has taken place on why we didn't cross the LoC, but why did we take so many casualties? All that has been discussed. But it's good that you clarified about how the flexibility was there actually.
Yes.
But coming to the conduct of the operation in Kargil and Dras and Batalik itself, those first 20 days would have been very tough on you as a leader, because you're not getting a breakthrough. There was a lot of casualties. How did you cope with it?
See, a large number of casualties were suffered when we were following the old rules of engagement.
Right.
And we had absolutely no clues as to where the enemy is lodged. Suddenly you come into contact with somebody, they would fire at you, and then you will realize, okay, these people, the adversary is sitting on that hilltop.
In any case, you were climbing, our boys were climbing.
And all the time our troops were climbing, because they had occupied these high positions.
Yes.
So we suffered a lot of casualties, which was very sad. And then I would also say that in the first few battles, including Tololing, Three Pimples, there also we suffered a lot of casualties initially, because that, you can imagine, it was a hand-to-hand fight taking place there.
Yes.
But after that, once we had captured 5140, etc., then the casualties were much less with us.
Right.
In fact, the Pakistanis suffered more casualties, and they kept suffering more casualties.
Of course. And then I think Tololing, you have described in your book, as well as in several interviews, was the first turning point.
That was the first turning point, but that was also the point when I can admit that very stressful period for me.
That's what I wanted to know that.
These boys, second Rajrif, they were launched after our attacks, initial attacks. Tololing had failed. And by this time, 8th Mountain Div had taken over.
Right.
And Mohinder Puri asked me, he wanted little time to be prepared and all. I said, don't worry, but don't go unprepared. So they went fully prepared.
Sure.
And that hand-to-hand fighting at the Tololing top and hump, that continued for a number of days. I would say almost from 13th of June till about 18th of June.
Right.
And when you know that your boys are fighting, involved in hand-to-hand fighting,
yes.
I mean, that was a period I couldn't speak much.
I can imagine.
But when on the 18th that whole area was cleared, then I got my breath
back. And I think you announced it also, I remember.
Yes.
You said that we have got this first success.
And then I was, quite sort of, and by this time I also saw the way our boys had fought, the junior leadership, the other subordinates and all.
Yes.
That gave me a lot of confidence.
Sure. In fact, General Mohinder Puri has said this in an interview to me in this series itself, that only thing he asked from you when you gave him the task was that I should not be subjected to any pressure, and you should allow me some time, which you immediately granted. That's what he said.
Right.
And I think that was important, because without preparation, going there would have been suicidal, I suppose.
That's right. And also we started inducting extra artillery and other elements into that battle zone.
Yes.
So that took a little time.
Correct.
But by that time I was quite clear that nobody should be launching an attack without adequate preparation.
Right. So talking about artillery, I know we've been saying that Bofors played a very big part there. But when it started off, did you visualize that you would have to use artillery in such a way that it was used there? And it actually played a very crucial part, isn't it?
You see, artillery was used effectively. We had Bofors. There was no reason not to use them.
Right.
We also had 130 millimeter guns and all.
Right.
So we were able to take direct shoots in our own area wherever required. But you must also realize that although we were not to cross the line of control, but our artillery shells could go that side.
Could have easily crossed, yes.
And they were very effective. In fact, a lot of people, when they asked me, why did Pakistan suffer more casualties than us while we were climbing the mountain and trying to recapture this thing? So I tell them, I said that, look, we couldn't go across, but our artillery shells could
did go across.
And our boys, whether they were, Army aviation boys who could go up to 19,000 feet and take the targets, and others. So our guns were very effective.
That's right. And I think the synergy later worked out very well between infantry and artillery, because the direction of fire was very well coordinated.
No, it's amazing, I would say, because sometimes the infantry units called for artillery fire when they were just about 100 yards away from the enemy.
And they're very close to that.
Very close to that.
Yes.
Which was provided.
Right. And that actually was used very effectively. I mean, from all the accounts that one has had and the interviews that one has
spoken. 80% of the casualties that are suffered in war are generally by the from artillery.
Right.
Not not small arms.
Not small arms, yeah.
And that's why they were very effective.
And but the point everyone makes, even abroad, is how Indian Army used artillery so effectively, even in the mountains.
Yes.
And in direct firing role, which I think was very innovative in a way.
That was, I think the credit should go to Lakhbir Singh, who was the CRT of 8 Mountain Day.
Yes.
Yeah. And at places, artillery, the gun was taken into 3 parts to a particular platform from where they could see the target directly.
Right.
Okay. So then those 3 parts were assembled at that platform and then taken the shoot.
Right.
And they were very effective, almost up to 15-16 kilometers.
Right. And that's what happened. Because of the rarefied atmosphere also, it did help. So, talking about the higher directions of war, sir, I mean, of course, all these battles were going on, and also, if you, I want to recall, and I know because I was there also, the political atmosphere in the country was that this was like a caretaker government, Mr. Vajpayee's, and elections were due going forward. Was there any pressure on any one of you, especially you, to hurry up and get things done?
No. I must say that the government was very supportive all along. Initially, there was this doubt about but because the intelligence agencies had been saying...
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I got full support.
Right.
And nobody ever... in fact, I must say that everyone, including particularly Mr. Brijesh Mishra, who was the NSA, they were our... any problem that I had, I would approach him and he would make sure that it is sorted out. So the other thing was that, we were meeting every day, sometimes even twice a day. And I had direct communication with the Prime Minister.
Yes.
And with these meetings taking place every day, no problems remained more than, all the problems were sorted out very quickly.
Immediately.
So I can say that the government was very supportive to whatever action that we were taking place.
At that point in time, one of your famous which became a famous statement later, was that we will fight with whatever we have. What had prompted you to say that?
See, there was a shortage those days. From the time when Manmohan Singh was finance minister, and we were short of our foreign exchange and all.
Right.
So the army budget had shrunk.
Okay.
And there was a time, I think it was early 90s, when they put us on bottom line holdings.
I see. The minimum holdings.
And that was about 70%.
Okay.
The other problem was that we had raised so many Rashtriya Rifle Battalion, but the sanction had not been given for their equipment and their arms and ammunition. Now that had to be given away from the regular battalions.
Right.
So there was an overall shortage, and I had been talking about it even to the media sometimes.
Yes, exactly.
That look, we have
That's
these
right.
problems.
Yeah.
So one of these press conferences, when somebody asked me this question, sir, you've been complaining about shortage of weapons, etc.
Right.
And now that the war is on,
Yeah.
so my prompt reply,
Yeah,
was that we shall fight with whatever we have.
Exactly, and it became a very seminal statement, really.
So there was no alternative.
no
for
alternative.
us.
And you stated the facts, I think, that time.
That's
what
the
you
fact.
said. Yeah.
The other thing is that we must remember, the public must remember, and the politicians also must remember
Right.
that last moment induction of weapons is not workable.
Right.
Every weapon that you induct, it requires a certain amount of training, it requires logistics areas, it requires some spare parts, etc., etc.
Right.
So, to think that at the last moment we will be able to buy something and all, that's not good enough. So
And it's a lesson forever.
It's a lesson forever.
Actually.
So the armed forces have to fight with whatever they have
Right.
when the crisis, when the balloon goes up.
And therefore, one must be prepared all the time. I
That's
think
right.
that's the lesson from there that has happened. Coming to, this has been spoken, and I think we should spend some time on this, about the so-called intelligence inputs which were ignored. How did that pan out?
Look, the fact is that all our intelligence assessments that came from various civilian agencies, etc., they had negated the war.
Right.
They felt, the assessments were that Pakistan was not ready to go to war at all. The other thing was that this came up only a few months after Lahore Declaration.
I was just going to say that, yes.
So the politicians, political leadership also could not understand
Right.
that within 3 months of signing, taking place. So that kind of intelligence report, and I also must admit, there were certain surveillance failures along the line of control.
Okay. Right.
We had posts which were far away from each other,
Right.
but the helicopters had not been able to spot any enemy, and for patrolling somewhere probably got neglected.
Right.
So it was a huge intelligence cum surveillance failure,
Right.
particularly intelligence, because there was no assessment which said this thing.
Correct. I mean, you had no warning on that
No
from
warning
anyone.
at all.
No warning.
So
at
we
all.
were now, we had to take up the situation as it was.
Right.
So I had to, once we realized that these are not jihadis, and I felt that these are now, we are fighting with Pakistan Army, so I had to take up this issue with the Prime Minister in the
Right.
CCS meeting.
Correct.
And he gave some time to the chairman of the JIC, who was the deputy NSA, to review the whole situation.
Right.
So after a few days, he came back, chairman JIC came back. He says, earlier we thought that these are 70% jihadis and 30% regular, but now we think it is the other way around.
Uh-huh.
But that also I challenged. I said that, look, there is no jihadis, which has
Right.
been confirmed today,
Yes.
that there were no jihadis in that area.
Correct.
But it takes time for political leadership and others to, because even till about middle of June, the Prime Minister still had some doubts. And he sent one of his interlocutors to Rawalpindi.
Right.
Not to Rawalpindi, sorry, to
To
Islamabad.
Islamabad, yes.
And he asked Nawaz Sharif, कि ये क्या हो रहा है?
Exactly.
And Nawaz Sharif's reply was, मुझे तो मालूम नहीं क्या हो रहा है.
And that was the trick there, really, because I think the Prime Minister of Pakistan was kept in the dark.
Well, either he was not briefed adequately,
Right.
or he was kept in the dark.
Okay. So, once you push back on this notion that there are 70% jihadis, and then it sort of turned around, did the politicians and the CCS accept your
Yes.
assessment?
Yes. After that, they did not question me on anything.
Right.
And we used whatever weapons that we wanted to,
Right.
except for the fact that we could not
Cross the
line of control.
Yeah, that was there. Now, when you, as a military leader, as a army chief, why do you think General Musharraf did
Nitin,
this?
one thing I
Yes.
must also tell you,
Yes.
that those days we did not have any surveillance devices which are available these days.
Like the satellite imagery.
Satellite imagery. There were no drones.
No drones, yeah.
There were no radars
Right.
with us. There were no weapon locating radars which
Correct.
the artillery uses.
Right.
We had no night vision devices.
Absolutely.
So we were totally
Actually, you were doing only the basics of patrolling and doing things there.
Yeah.
No, so coming back to the military reasons or the military analysis, why do you think Pervez Musharraf did what he did?
See, one, I would put it as his psyche.
Okay.
He was a commando.
Right.
Okay, he had been trying to capture some areas when he was a brigadier
Right.
in Siachen, and he had failed. So that was always on his mind. The other thing, I always say he was a good commando, but a bad strategician.
Exactly. Tactically, he may have been good, but strategically, he always failed. Yes.
No, they had not catered for the kind of opposition that they may get.
Right.
And they were also, I would say, very poor in their logistics arrangements.
Right.
You know, I mean, we saw people who were captured by us totally hungry. They had not been able to eat for so many days,
my
etc. And they had no water, things like that.
Right.
So logistically also, they had not catered.
They had
for
not
it.
thought it through, perhaps.
No, they had not thought it through.
Yeah. So, but when you see, when you look back, Pakistan has always made this mistake. I mean, in most of these operations, in either Siachen or in Kargil also. And I think the Indian Army did so well in giving full honors, military honors to their dead
Yes.
at that point in time. I think that was the highlight of the
In
war.
Tiger
itself.
Hill,
Yeah.
where we had killed one of their captain, colonels, colonel, he was a captain or a major colonel.
Right.
His name was Colonel.
Yeah.
So I believe that the brigade commander, our brigade commander, had put a chit for this fellow having fought so well,
Right.
and he got the highest
Yes.
gallantry award.
Yeah. That's what they based on that he got that,
Yeah.
and I think you gave them full honors. You buried them.
And we returned that body.
returned their bodies.
No, this particular body,
This was returned.
they asked and we returned it.
Right.
The other bodies,
Yes.
I think they left more than 250 bodies
Yeah.
in our area.
And they were all given military honors.
They were, as far as we were concerned, we
Right.
gave them.
You gave them that. Now, we are exactly quarter century after that war, and it became, of course, headlines, and everyone was worried. Two nuclear armed neighbors fighting immediately after, 1 year after, 1.5 years after the nuclear test, which had happened on both sides. Did you feel at any point that this war might get widened or escalate at that point in time? And then what? You know?
Look, the escalation could have taken place from both sides.
Okay.
If they felt that they were successful, they could have escalated it. You know how the
Yeah.
person who's succeeding, he wants to
Yes.
do more.
Right.
And the escalation could have taken place from our side.
Yes.
As I told you,
Yes.
that we were quite prepared for
Right.
it. And our forces are much stronger. You know, we have that capacity, we
Right.
have that capability. So I was quite confident about that. The other thing under such situation that you have to think of, you have to maintain good relations internationally.
Right.
That is an important issue.
Yes.
And then your objectives should not be such that you force them to cross a red line,
Right. Correct.
you know. So you work on objectives in a manner
Right.
that, so I think that much under the nuclear threshold is possible.
Right.
And that's why I said limited wars
Under
probably
the
are more
overhang.
likely, you
Yes.
know, and I wrote
Yeah.
about that
You have.
at a number of places
Yes.
about limited wars.
Right.
also.
That's what. So I think that must have been always playing on your mind. How much can you go?
That's
How
right.
much further could you
Yeah.
go at that
Yeah.
point in time? One final
Our operational plans were made
like that.
accordingly.
Yes. So now coming to human resource. I mean, the Indian Army's strength is, of course, the gallant soldier and the young cutting edge, the leadership at the unit level and sub-unit level. Much has been written about their heroics, their bravery and all that. What is your abiding memory of that period?
Look, I mean, these are remarkable achievements, what these boys have done. And whatever I may say about them will be insufficient, frankly. I saw boys at the level of Havaldars and JCOs getting wounded, coming back from there, from the front line. I saw officers, young officers, getting killed, and yet. But I must tell you that they were the real winners of the war.
Right.
They were the ones. So our human capital that we have in the armed forces is absolutely remarkable and better than anything that I have seen.
Exactly.
In Delhi, I would generally be confronted with a lot of netas and civil service people and others, and even my own colleagues. Look at me, ke sir ho paega, nahi hoga, all that. But whenever I went to the front line, which I did almost every 6th day,
Right.
nobody ever said it can't be done.
Exactly.
If you ask me, they were my morale boosters.
Right.
So our human capital is remarkable. While the gun is important, but the man behind the gun is the key to success.
And that was proved in Kargil.
That was
absolutely.
proved in
And it is being proved again and again
Again,
every time.
Absolutely.
And one final thought, sir, on the nation's support at that
Yes.
point in time. I think what I remember, because I also remember going with a couple of dead bodies which were being returned to the families, and the kind of upsurge of support and patriotism I saw in Darjeeling and in Assam and all other places. And before I went to Kargil at that point in time, wasn't that one of the great plus points for India that time?
It was a huge plus point.
Right.
Huge plus point. And I have never seen our country gelled together and supporting their armed forces as they did during that period.
Right.
Initially, when we started sending back, we took the decision that all bodies must be taken back to their
Right.
villages, kith and kin.
Correct.
And most of these had to go through Delhi,
Right.
because Delhi is a central point.
Yes.
And some senior officers, in fact, rang me up, and he said that, what are you doing? This will demoralize everybody. But I had taken that decision,
Yeah.
so I didn't change that decision.
Right.
And finally, I find that that became a support for us.
It did.
That became a huge support for us. I mean, I can't forget the scenes that later on came to light. Kangruze's body, when it was being taken from Dimapur all the way to Kohima,
Right.
and the huge crowd.
Yes.
Similarly, whether it was Chennai, it was Punjab, it was Haryana,
Maharashtra, I think, was
wherever.
there. Yeah, I went to
Maharashtra,
Darjeeling, like I mentioned, Nongrum, KC Nongrum's body to Meghalaya,
to Meghalaya.
you know, and Himachal Pradesh.
Everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah.
So that was very good that we got that support. It makes a difference on our morale, not
Right.
only of the leaders, but even the men who get to hear about these things,
Right.
or who hear these things from their relations and all. So tremendous national support.
And the Pakistanis keep lamenting that the Indian media actually, played a part in supporting the Indian army so much, and we didn't get that support from our people. How do you look at that?
Look, whatever they can. The fact is that they started the war by telling lies
Right.
to their own public.
Yes. So they couldn't get that support.
There was no way that they could get.
Right.
Even their own support, whatever people believed in Pakistan Army, they stopped believing them.
That's right.
After they realized
Exactly.
these are
Lies.
not true.
Yeah.
But our media did well. Initially, we did falter here and there because it was a new kind of an era,
Sure.
both for media and for us
Yeah,
also.
for all
you
of
know.
us, yes.
We were now fighting a televised war.
Right.
But finally, I think it worked to our.
Because you wrote also in the book
Yes.
how it sort of played into this. So in fact,
It worked to our advantage.
Right, it did. It did. Internationally also, I think we got support because
Right.
of the reports, and also that decision not to cross LoC until really pushed hard also got us that support.
So you see, the truth came out from our side.
Right.
The Pakistanis got to know the truth from us,
Yes.
and when they got to know the truth, their armed forces morale went down.
Absolutely.
While our morale
Yes.
here, because of the media coverage that went up because they realized that we were getting national support.
Absolutely.
So media did make a lot of difference. The only thing is that how to, I wouldn't call the manage part, I wouldn't say manage media,
Yes.
but how to interact with media.
Right.
That is an important issue, and
it-
that has to be part of your strategy now.
It has to be there because now the proliferation of media in various platforms is much more than that time. It was only television that time. Now
That's
you have
right.
social media,
Yeah.
you have the social media platforms. So I think influence operations, information warfare has also become
So
very
you
important.
need expertise now from both sides.
Right, absolutely. No, I think that's a great thought because, like I said, nation support, and I must share this small piece of information. This entire idea of revisiting Kargil and speaking to veterans and of course leaders like you came from my son who was then 10 years old, and he remembers doing a donation drive from school and blood donation drive from school. So, and he was about 10 years old that time, and he said, are you not doing anything for 25 years? So that's where it started. I had not thought about it, frankly, but in January he asked me, and I said, okay, let me try this. So, it reminds me of the kind of support and the kind of buzz it had created in the country
No,
itself.
I'm glad that we are celebrating these this event year after year, and this year, of course, as you know, it's a silver jubilee.
Yes.
Because there are large number of stories that should motivate, that would motivate
Yes.
our people, and that would enhance the national spirit
Sure.
amongst our people.
True.
So I think by having these celebrations, by covering the whole event
Right.
all over again in detail, is very helpful in spreading national spirit amongst the people, and particularly the youngsters, as you were saying.
Right.
Motivating them
Correct.
to understand what is national security.
Yes. And one final word from you on lessons still relevant for the Indian Army from that era.
See, the first and foremost lesson, I think, is that you cannot be not prepared for a war-like situation. You never know how it comes.
Yes.
I mean, here, 3 months earlier, we were signing an agreement with
Right.
Pakistan.
Yeah.
And within 3 months, then you had this kind of a thing.
Yes.
So you can't sort of wait to prepare yourself.
Right.
You have to remain alert. You have to be adequately equipped. You have to be trained, and you have to be trained all the time to be able to. I think that is the most important lesson.
Yes.
The other, there are many lessons, including one on media we have
Right.
just not discussed.
Yes.
But second important lesson, I think, is the synergy that is required.
Right.
Not only within the army, where you have a large number of
Right.
armed
Arms.
services
Yes.
and this thing, but also with the other two services.
Right.
And that energy, now that we are talking of theatre commands, and we are talking of CDS role,
Yes.
and so I think the earlier we do that and complete this
Yes.
whole
The
topic,
transformation that we're talking
yes,
about.
that we are talking of, better it would be. And I'm sure then what we will have, not only better capabilities, but I would say more economically also.
Yes.
So the third, I think I mentioned to you about the human resource. You cannot afford to neglect your human resource.
Right.
And whatever doubts these days that people have
Yes.
on Agniveer or Agnipath, they must
Right.
be sorted out
Quelled. Yeah.
as soon as possible.
Right.
Whatever we may want to modify
Right.
scheme,
Yes.
nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
But there should be no doubt in public that we are still getting the best soldiers, and we are doing well for them
And motivated soldiers.
and motivated.
Yes. Right.
And intelligence is another important. As I said, we failed in intelligence.
Right.
So that kind of intelligence, both technology-wise as well as human resource-wise, human intelligence, we need to be updated all the time. We cannot be entirely dependent on technology, nor only on human int. and the coordination that is required between the intelligence agencies and the armed forces, that must be as close as possible. Sometimes you find that intelligence agencies are always in a hurry to give the news or give information to the higher ups,
Right.
and they sort of wait to be given to the armed forces.
Right.
That is not the right thing to do.
Correct.
You have to spread it both vertically as well as horizontally to be able to.
Right.
But intelligence is one area where I feel that we still need to do more. Galwan, we were surprised,
Right.
isn't it, at
Yes,
that time?
exactly.
And similarly, we've had some issues like even Pulwama, we were surprised.
Right.
And so intelligence, I think we need to work
Absolutely.
more about it.
That's true. No, so I think we couldn't have had a better overview than what you have given us after 25 years and recalling that. And we will, of course, always forever remember your role in leading the army at that point in time. Your book is a seminal work on what happened at that point in time in terms of leadership, in terms of human resource and everything. So thank you very much for your time and your insights.
Thank you, Nitin. I didn't win the war. It was the armed forces who won the war.
No, of course.
Please remember
That's
that.
true. That's true. But that's like spoken like a leader. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was General VP Malik speaking to us and recalling the events of Kargil 1999 and of course thereafter, and some of the lessons that we must not only learn but imbibe and implement